Catherine was born in 1512, probably in the north of England, in what was known at the time as Westmoreland, which is now Cumbria. Her father was a lord and a knight, and the descendant from King Edward III. Her mother Maud was actually a lady-in-waiting to Henry VIII's first wife, Katherine of Aragon, and it seems the two women had a good relationship. And fun fact, Katherine of Aragon was actually Katherine Parr's godmother. A close bond was built also between Katherine Parr and Katherine of Aragon's daughter, Mary. Sadly, Catherine's father died when she was just 5, and her mother devoted herself to the upbringing of her 3 children. Thanks to her mother, Catherine was highly educated, intelligent, and spoke several languages. Fun fact, Katherine Parr has been married more than any other Queen of England. She had 4 marriages, which is only 2 less than Henry. She married for the first time at age 17 to Edward Burr. The marriage lasted 4 years until her husband's death. The second marriage happened in 1534 to John Neville. The Nevilles were one of the most powerful northern families, and John was knighted for his service in war. He was much older than Catherine, and she became stepmom to his 2 children. Neville, who was a Catholic, was all but forced into joining the Northern Uprising against the king. At this time, Catherine and the children were kept hostage and threatened with death. Neville assured the king that he was willing to submit, and because he had relationships with people in positions of power, his life and position remained safe. After their troubles in the north, the family spent most of their time in the south and at court. It could be here where Catherine met her future husband, Thomas Seymour. Thomas, who was the brother of the former Queen and Henry's 3rd wife, Jane Seymour. In 1543, Neville died, leaving Catherine a wealthy widow. Having been friends in childhood, Catherine became a lady in the Princess Mary's household, and it's likely she was first noticed by Henry around this time. But Catherine's relationship with Thomas Seymour had become very close, and they were actually looking to marry. But of course, once Henry decided he wanted Catherine for himself, he was the king and he got his way. Thomas was sent far away on a work mission, and Henry and Catherine were married in 1543. Now, Catherine wasn't as old as she's sometimes been portrayed to be. She was actually only 31 when she married Henry. She was thought to be attractive and stylish, and she loved fine fabrics and jewels. It's said that she was a tall woman, about 5'10". This would be tall for a woman nowadays, let alone in the shorter standard of the time. And with Henry being over 6 foot himself, this would have made them an impressive couple to see around the royal palaces. Henry and Catherine's relationship was completely different to the relationship he had had with his previous wife, Catherine Howard. Howard had been a giggly teenager who had cheated on the king. After that disastrous marriage, Henry was looking for something very different from his new wife. He wanted a wife he could have an easy time with. He would have been extremely irritable due to the ongoing pain with his legs. Looking to help him in any way she could, Catherine realised that a good way to distract him was to talk about religious issues. It was something they were both naturally interested in, and a good way for them to pass the time. Catherine used her position to give roles of privilege to her stepchildren, as well as other relations. Family was very important to her, and she built close relationships with her new stepchildren, Elizabeth and Edward. She took a keen interest in their education. She also worked hard to have Mary and Elizabeth brought back into the line of succession. Now, this was no new conversation. It had actually been talked about for years, and Henry's 3rd queen had also tried to make this happen. But finally, Henry made it legal in 1544. When Henry was out of the country for war, Catherine became regent. This was a big deal, as if Henry were to die, Catherine would then become regent to Henry's son Edward until he became old enough to become king himself. This was huge power and responsibility, and it really shows the level of trust and respect Henry had in Catherine. She was praised in this time period for ruling with strength, wisdom, and dignity. This would have been a fantastic example of how a queen should behave for Mary and Elizabeth, who would of course both go on to become queens. Catherine was a supporter of the arts and education, and she was very interested in religion. She actually wrote very popular books on the subject, at first anonymously, but later as herself. However, this was almost her downfall. With religion being such a contentious issue, Catherine gained enemies, including Bishop Gardiner, who was a devout Catholic. He interpreted her writing as heresy, and the bishop actually convinced the king to allow an investigation to take place. Clearly, Gardiner knew exactly what he wanted the result of this investigation to be, and that was that the Queen was guilty. An arrest warrant was prepared, but becoming aware of the situation ahead of time, Catherine showed courage and wisdom by submitting herself to Henry and justified her religious conversations as a way of distracting him from his ongoing pain with his legs. After listening to her words, Henry made peace with Catherine, and the danger was over. But unfortunately, the message didn't get to the guards, and they arrived to arrest the Queen while she was out walking with Henry. And it's said that he was furious with them. In 1547, Henry died. Catherine was to be given respect and money as a Queen of England. However, at this point, she mostly retired from court life. In a questionable move, she quickly and secretly married her fourth husband, the now returned Thomas Seymour. It was kept secret due to the fact that as a recent widow, the thought of her marrying again so soon, especially for a woman of her position, would have been a scandal. Catherine, who had built a close relationship with Princess Elizabeth, actually became her guardian, and they lived together with Thomas Seymour. At this point in her life, for the first time, Catherine became pregnant. Her life must have seemed so happy, but sadly things soon went wrong, when her ambitious husband started to show an inappropriate interest in Elizabeth, who would have only been about 15. It's thought that Catherine may have even caught them embracing. Elizabeth, not surprisingly, was sent away, and they never saw each other again. In August that same year, Catherine gave birth to her child, who was called Mary. But tragically, Catherine died about a week later of postnatal complications. Katherine Parr may not have had as many famous moments as some of Henry's other wives, but I still think her story is really interesting. She was a survivor, at least until nature got in the way. She's a really good example of an intelligent woman of the time, manoeuvring around the tricky political Tudor court. But I also think she made some very risky choices, with her openness about religion and her fourth marriage. I think what's sad about Catherine's story, that after years of looking after other people, she finally got seemingly everything she wanted. But it would all end far too soon.